Well, staying with politics, the Green Party launched their election manifesto for England and Wales today, promising a £50 billion a year investment in the NHS and in social care.
Well, they say it's going to be paid for by a tax on higher earners and the wealthy. Let's get more on this now. We're joined by the party's co-leader, Adrian Ramsay. Morning to you, Mr. Ramsay. We're going to talk about tax in just a moment, but first of all, I want to ask you about the story that we've just been running about trust. How are you going to make the voters trust the Green Party?
I think that's a really good question, Sally, at a time when people have lost trust in politics, particularly after the scandals of recent years. And I think people are looking for something different. They're looking for parties to be really honest with them. And in publishing our manifesto today, we're setting out our proposals and very clearly how we would fund them, because we want to be honest with people that if we're going to restore our public services, if we're going to invest in the transition to a green future with all the benefits that brings, if we're going to address the crisis of housing where people can't afford to live in their local communities, then we're going to need to put the money in to do so. So I think being honest with people is a really important start, and being active on the ground. You know, I speak to people on the doorstep in East Anglia all the time who say that no one's knocked on their door in the 25 years they've lived there, and they really appreciate Greens being active on the ground, actively campaigning and offering people the chance to vote for a Green MP, often in areas where they're not used to there being a genuine choice.
Who is your typical voter? Who is going to vote for the Green Party in this election? Do you know them?
Well, we have such a wide range of voters. If you look at how the Green Party's been doing in elections over the last 5 years, where we've increased our number of elected representatives fivefold in all corners of England and Wales, we're winning seats in urban areas and rural areas, from Labour and from the Conservatives, and young and old voters alike coming to support the Green Party. I spoke to a lady just the other day who said to me that she's voting Green for the first time because she's thinking about what the future's going to be like for her children and grandchildren. And so many people are saying the same to us. Equally, younger people who've been priced out of being able to live in their local community, their private rent is skyrocketing, and Greens are saying we want to have a cap on private rents and force more building of affordable housing, both to buy and to rent. So we've got things to offer for people of all ages and generations and backgrounds, and that's why we've got such a wide range of people coming to support the Green Party right across the country in what's our most ambitious election campaign ever.
So here's an unusual question. You're talking about tax rises. Explain what you're trying to sell to the British public.
Well, the first thing we're trying to sell is that we need to invest in our health service, in our housing system, in the transition to a greener economy and many other areas if we're to achieve the real hope and real change that people need. And the Institute of Fiscal Studies has said that the next government is either going to have to increase taxes or cut public spending. So we're being honest that we're going to ask those with the broader shoulders to pay modestly more. So, for example, we will be introducing a tax on multimillionaires and billionaires, people with assets over 10 million being asked to pay a 1% tax on those assets over 10 million that could raise tens of billions a year by the end of this next Parliament. And I think it's right to ask those with the broader shoulders to contribute more in a way that will enable us to put in those investments that everyone in society will benefit from. We need to get our levels of public investment up to the levels that other European countries are at if we're to maintain and restore our NHS, if we're to address the housing crisis, invest in our schools and make sure that we can have a transition to a greener future that will benefit everybody if we have warmer homes, better public transport and produce more of our food locally.
You say you're going to be asking those with the broadest shoulders to carry this burden, but am I right in suggesting that your manifesto says there will be tax increases for anyone earning more than £50,270 per year? Now, that is a good salary. It's higher than the national average, but is that correct? And for people earning £50,000 and supporting a family, do they really have the broadest shoulders?
So we have a range of proposals in our manifesto for how we'll fund what we're trying to do. And yes, one of them is to ask those earning over 50,000 to pay the same percentage of their salary on national insurance as those earning under 50,000. So for someone earning 55,000 a year, that would amount to £5 a week extra. So modest increases for those on middle incomes, and everybody will benefit from that, including those on middle incomes who need to have a health service that they can rely on, who need to have access to affordable housing, who need to have the benefit of all the jobs that we can create through a transition to a green economy. And so we're looking at asking those earning a little bit more to pay a bit more, and those with significant wealth to pay a wealth tax. And I'm talking there about multimillionaires and billionaires. So yes, those earning over 50,000 will be asked to pay slightly more, but it's about a transition to a greener and fairer future where we can really ensure that we're investing in our health service, in affordable housing, in a way that benefits everybody.
So just to be clear, so for somebody earning £55,000 a year, they're actually going to pay almost £300 a year more in national insurance. And if somebody earns £65,000 a year, they're actually going to pay £883 extra in a year, £883 more every year. Now, we are still in a cost of living crisis, aren't we? People are struggling to make ends meet, even on those higher salaries. What would you say to those people who might be considering voting for you, but then look at those numbers and just think it's too much?
Well, as you say, the cost of living crisis is very much still here, and there's proposals in our manifesto for how we'd particularly help those on the lowest incomes through that. But we are all suffering as a result of rents and mortgages going up, of high levels of energy bills and food prices. And our manifesto is about tackling the root causes of that. So, for example, we have a proposal for a nationwide programme to insulate people's homes in a way that brings bills down, keeps homes warm. That will benefit people on middle incomes as well as those on low and high incomes. Same with our proposals to produce more of our food locally, reduce reliance on imports of food and keep food prices down. So the range of Green Party proposals are about addressing the reasons for the cost of living crisis, ensuring people can access an NHS dentist when they need one, so they're not needing to go private, ensure that people have got access to good quality social care, would make social care free at the point of delivery for personal care, so that everybody will benefit from public services, more public services being free at the point of use, including those on middle incomes. And if we're going to have the types of public services that we want, then the Institute of Fiscal Studies has been very clear that there are going to need to be some tax increases to do that. And the Green Party is the only party that's being honest in this election in saying we are going to need to do so. Some small increases for those on middle incomes over 50,000 and some more significant increases, although actually only a 1% tax for those on over 10 million of assets.
Let's talk about transport just for a moment, because petrol cars are due to be banned in 2035, having been pushed back from 2030. When would you ban them?
We want to move towards phasing out of new petrol and diesel cars by 2035. There needs to be a range of proposals to go alongside that makes it easier for people, A, to use public transport so that public transport's cheaper and easier to use, and B, for those who do need access to the car, and there are plenty of those who do, particularly in rural areas such as the area that I'm standing in East Anglia, we want to invest in the electric vehicle infrastructure, which needs far more investment in terms of the charging infrastructure and the ways in which we can help bring down the prices of electric vehicles. And we would put in place funding for people to be able to replace their vehicle as we move towards that deadline. So we've got time to do that, and that's 2035 in terms of new vehicles.
Do you have an electric car?
I have a hybrid car, which is self-generating. The reason I bought a hybrid car rather than an electric car is because I was living in a terraced house at the time I bought it, and I didn't have access to a charging point. And that highlights one of the infrastructure issues that we need to tackle, which is to ensure that if people don't have a driveway, that we've got easy to access charging points on street sides, as some councils are starting to do, but the infrastructure needs a lot more investment.
What about flights? Will you put restrictions on how many flights people can take every year?
Not restrictions on the number people can take, no. We do have a proposal for a frequent flyer levy, and the reason for that is that the vast majority of flights are taken by just 15% of the population. So again, the very richest causing the most emissions. So our proposals aren't about the average family taking one flight a year, but about if people are taking multiple flights having a tax that gradually increases so that those who are polluting the most and have got the money to do so are actually disincentivised or have to put the funding in that we can then put into the alternatives, into the public transport improvements that we need. Because there are so many other countries in Europe that have public transport systems that mean that people are not flying short distances because the public transport is more reliable and cheaper for those same journeys.
What is multiple flights? What's the number?
Well, I'm not going to put forward a specific proposal for how the frequent flyer levy could work here. There are a number of organisations and research groups that have proposed how that could work. What I've said is that an average family that takes one flight a year would not be affected by it, but certainly by the time someone gets to taking multiple flights a year, then there would be an extra tax that would come in on that in order to reflect the fact that 15% of the population, just 15%, are taking the vast majority of the flights. And so this increase in emissions from aviation is something that's a matter of inequality in society, and we need to raise the money to improve our public transport because our train prices are really high by European standards, and if we bring those prices down, invest in public transport, then people have got those alternatives that they need.
How many flights did you take last year?
It's been many years since I've flown myself, and that's a decision that I've taken and that lots of people have taken. But as I say, we're not looking to penalise families who might take one holiday a year.
Adrian Ramsay, thank you.
That said, I went to the Lake District recently without flying.
Adrian Ramsay, thank you very much indeed.